Thank you, Teresa. Leading into our main event, Strategic Synergy. All right, so the Strategic Synergy Conference is happening on March 20th. If you're not already aware, where are you? Are you living under a rock? You have to be there. And I have Corinne with us today. So I'm super, super excited to get him because I know she has some interesting stuff to share with us. So I am Dion Harris, and I am fortunate enough to be the host of the webinar today and just one member of the team who's organizing the conference. And yes, I'm the founder, but we do have some partners who probably are heavy hitters than I am. So I want to acknowledge our partners here on the call and thank them so much for joining. But today we are really here to talk about change management. And I'm jumping right in. I want to introduce to you, you can go to the next slide, today's speaker, Ms. Corinne Finnie. Corinne is in cold Calgary at the moment. I'm not going to share the temperatures over there, but I'm just sending some warmth to you, Corinne, because I know that you need it. But if I had to share a few things that are not here on this slide, I would have to say Corinne is one of the most fantastic conversationalists I've ever met. And I'm really, really looking forward to a conversation that spans some of her specialties, because it's not just change management. She is a full organizational development strategist. And I feel super, super excited, but also very, very grateful to have her on the call today. So you can have a look at her bio and we can share it as well. But I am going to move on to our house rules. All right, so if you can, just like some of us have already done, please share your screen. We would love to see your beautiful faces. Of course, mute your mic if you're not speaking, of course. And typically we would have questions at the end, but Corinne does love to have a conversation. So if you do, feel free to indicate that you would like to ask a question during the webinar, and I know that she will assist. If you're not able to answer using your audio, feel free to put it in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat and we will answer those questions on your behalf. Feel free to drop comments and engage along the way. This is really all about you. All right, so Corinne, we are ready to hear all about change. Well, not all about change management, because the rest of it is coming at the conference, but we really, really are excited to hear what you have in store for us today. So welcome, Corinne.
Thank you so much, Dion. And it's, I think today, minus 28 with a wind chill of around minus 40. So in Calgary, Alberta, we're in a cold snap. And so I'm so grateful to have some Barbados warmth this morning. So thank you.
Yeah, you know, Corinne, I'm beginning to wonder how genuine this sponsorship is in terms of coming all the way to Barbados. I'm beginning to think this is all about you.
It is all about me. Yes. You know me well to know that it is all about me escaping to where, life is beautiful. So, okay. So I'm really excited to talk today about change management. We're going to look a little bit about, what it is and what this practice is, what it does for organizations, but mostly for leaders and leaders of all levels. So whether you're, an aspiring leader or a middle manager, senior leader, this, I hope, will give you a perspective that will get you thinking a little bit about how your organization moves through transformation. And so I just want to do like a quick, this is our logo at 29 Degrees Institute. We're boldly strategic and fiercely human. So we really try and move organizations to achieve the goals they need to accomplish but we are fiercely focused on making sure the human experience, people are well taken care of and understand and are successful being part of that direction. I just also want to share a little bit of the kinds of organizations I work with. Have spoken in Jamaica and Belize, neighbors too, as well as I work with First Nation communities in Alberta, lots of government work, private sector work. So I've got I'm hoping to pull in some of the experience I have across my sectors to be able to inspire some thinking today. So there's some snow. So leading through transformation can feel lonely. Like when you are working towards moving the strategic imperatives from current state into a future state, that middle transition period can feel very lonely at times. So I'm hoping to give you a little bit of clarity on what the activities. We need to be very active as leaders when we're looking at supporting innovation or change that's coming. And also how we can be a positive contributor to a shift in culture. So organizations sometimes have a very linear way of implementing new strategy. So it's the notion of how do we influence from our position to ensure that there's a little bit more of a broader perspective. This is going to plant seeds, but knowing that there's a bit of readiness your organization has to undergo in order to maybe implement all of them. But I want to get you guys thinking about things like that. So first thing is along with Dion, I love middle managers. So I always say middle managers are the peanut butter and jelly of every sandwich. They're the middle. They're the key elements for an organization's success. And I just want to think a little bit about traditional models of how strategic imperatives, so new direction, innovation, transformation, change, is passed down into the front line of actions. So our top strategic imperatives are typically owners, they might make up part of the senior leaders, but really they're the business owners or the people who are really accountable or responsible for the organization as a whole. They're responsible for the why we're doing this. Why are we moving towards a new technology or a new staffing model or a new direction in diversified revenue streams? So they're the why. We need to do this. This is why, and this is why we're headed there. Senior leaders then have a smaller influence, and they are focused on the what and when. So what are we going to do about that? Get together as a senior leader group and say, well, what are we going to do? Like, I'm in charge of finance, I'm in charge of HR, I'm in charge of operations. What are we going to do in order to meet those imperatives? And and usually when is linked into the strategic imperative, this fiscal, in 3 years. Like, you can build a roadmap depending on the scope of the transformation. And some senior leaders get into the how. They'll say, and this is how we need to do that. And I have it in yellow because I feel like this how is where we start talking about leading through transformation. And I'm not necessarily, some organizations spend a lot of time this would be like the micromanaging. Okay, we're going to implement this, and they get right into the how. When actually it's the middle manager who should be empowered with the who needs to be a part of this from my team, and how are we going to actually do this in my division, my area. And they're the ones, middle managers are the ones that bring it to an actual action plan, bring it to life. And then they will inspire and encourage the front line, share the direction, also the how. So the front line doesn't necessarily, they might have influence over who, but it's mostly, well, how are we going to do this? Now, you'll see that the bottom arrow on the front line is a small arrow going up. For transformational organizations that embrace change management, embrace different ways to transform, that frontline how is much bigger. There's genuine levels of engagement for feedback and direction and guidance from people who will be implementing. And there's genuine interest in the impact it will have on the front line. So transformational organizations do this a little bit differently. This looks very familiar to me, like this sort of linear and then get it done kind of vibes in most organizations. So we're trying to be just respectfully and appropriately disruptive in saying, when can we include the voice of the frontline? Okay. Now, if you have any questions or comments, feedback, anything you want to add, please feel free to jump in at any time. Okay. So this is it in a different format. So there's a need for motivation to transform. There's a reason, the why, the strategic imperative. Then we get to the notion of strategic planning with the senior leaders. Sometimes they'll pull in middle managers. Lots of times they don't. And they talk about, what are the goals? Why are we doing this? And where are we needing to transform in the business? And then they will put together a strategic plan, or they have an individual that is the person that's charged with creating a strategic plan and a roadmap. And then that is passed over to the middle managers to say, implement and achieve success, make it happen. And a lot of times this kind of very linear and authoritative way of rolling out a new transformative imperative sometimes feels like a sinking ship. And where the people start to, the notion between what needs to be done and how it needs to be done is completely misaligned, and we flounder. Or, Dion and I have talked about this a lot of times around how there's this fancy, beautiful strategic plan built to try and get us in a direction, and it sits on a shelf collecting dust. And people are, so, well, what happened to that? I thought we were going to implement, a new system. I thought we were going to implement a new direction, and you don't hear about it. So this is one of the biggest areas that leading through leaders and in support with change management can make a difference in organizations' success. Okay. So I'm just going to want to stop there and take a bit of a poll. And so Teresa, if you want to share that link, that would be so great in the chat. So just thinking about your time working, and it doesn't, if you're working to be a leader or are a leader, just think about, just from your experience to date, how successfully has your organization or previous organizations implemented innovation or new strategic directives? So think about the success rate of a couple of them, and just put in the poll your response there, and we'll pull them up a little bit. So I'll give you about 48 seconds to do that. It shouldn't take too long, maybe not even that long. Okay. So and Teresa, when they're finished, we'll put it in the chat and we'll just take a look at it. So here's some based on research. Here's, if you've answered, they haven't been that strategic or they haven't been that successful, you're not alone. Like, there is a huge amount of failure being experienced when it comes to moving from current state to some future state. And so you can see like 19% fail outright. So this is of projects that are being implemented to transform an organization. That to me is astounding. And so when it comes to looking at organizations that want to do things differently, they've got things stacked up against them, and in traditional models of implementation. Only 31% of projects are deemed successful. And so that tells me 70% or 69 are not. But even for digital transformation, which is, implementing a new software system or a new solution, there's still a massive amount of failure. And actually, I do a lot of IT support. And I see it, even though I'm embedded in the team, I see the areas where they start to get into the ditch. And, without having some guidance and leadership, it would never stay on the road. Like it just immediately will go into the ditch. So the top 4 reasons of why, based on research, is there's a lack of people buy-in. So whatever they're trying to implement in the business, people are not about it. They don't want to adopt it. They don't get it. They don't think it makes sense. They resist and refuse to actually work with the new processes and work with the new system and find workarounds, find ways to not change. Poor planning and execution, absolutely. And they're only focused on the functional implementation. So they're saying, if it's a project team that's been brought in to implement a new system, they'll, what I call the drop and run, or throw a ball in a box and hope it lands. Like they just will say, I did my part, and functionally it should work. And so it's up to you guys to use it. I don't know if you've ever heard that in your career, but this is a common situation. And there's a failure to plan ahead. So planning for what it looks like in post go live, post implementation, what sustaining that new transformational piece, that change actually requires. A lot of times it requires more resources or an impact on people's capacity. You can't, like it to me, it's commonsensical. You've added a new way of doing something, and you probably are now impacting people's capacity to maintain this new way. And so then resources become an issue. The ability to continuously improve, it becomes obsolete within the first year because we are not actually using it in the system the way it's meant to. So to me, this boils down to people. So I've got these like 5 people here. So the people are not considered. So you can build a fantastic strategic plan. You can create a fantastic new software to manage your relationship management, case management. But when we don't look at the human beings that are actually using the new system technology, processes, the new culture, when we don't consider the human beings that are actually being impacted, we have failure. Okay. Okay. So that's where the practice of organizational change management came in because of those statistics. And they actually change management, the way that it's performed, is evolving. So we're not making the hugest impact with just change management alone, but that's why I've believed that it's not about me coming in as an org dev strategist and offering support. It's about building capacity in leaders who are actually, the only constant is change. So how do we get people, leaders, and staff thinking about transformational change differently? So I hear it all the time, even when I'm brought into a project or in a new contract, they'll say, oh, this one should be smooth sailing all the time. It's like this one won't be like the last 5 implementations we've done. Now we've got this change manager. So I just caution people to say we need to be, I'm going to be disruptive. It's going to be uncomfortable because if we're going to want to see different results, we got to do things differently. So let's just look at this note. What is it? What's change management? So it actually has been developed since the 80s. That's been something that has been known. And it's the culmination of 3 areas of focus. So organizational behavior, human motivation. So a lot to do with how humans operate, think, feel, and leadership skills. Like, how do people lead? We used to call them manage, like we went through this whole phase of like management skills. Now we're talking about leadership skills. We've trying to evolve that practice of being a leader. Everyone's a leader, who's a leader? Like there's a lot of discussion around leadership. So in change management, we have taken those 3 disciplines and created a strategic framework. And that still is evolving to this day. So, and I love being a part of that evolution with different ways of doing this type of work, bundling it and thinking about it. And it really boils down to 3 things. It's what we do, what we think, and what we feel. So it's those 3 areas that guide our hand and the way that we approach how we work with our people and organizational culture, morale. Okay, so when we don't have the support of this philosophy or this discipline, thinking, feeling, doing, and we just implement and say, drop and run, or throw the ball in the closed box and hope it, does something good. We get this like I call it the big splash. We get this big impact and that kind of measurement of the degree of stress. So we've seen that where we're like, okay, now we've got to, use a new HR system, and we weren't really trained. We've got some job aids, and this degree of stress increases dramatically without having a shift in the way we do transformation. With our structured approaches, structured thinking about our leadership skills, human behavior, and the way our organization is set up, you can actually land it. There will still be impacts along the way, but you can land it where there's not residual stress. So I always say, I'm sure I hear it all the time. If not daily, people hate change. Oh, Corinne, you know what? These people hate change. And I say, no, you can't let yourself off that easy. People will embrace change when the transition to future state is well designed. We are about change as human beings. We buy a new phone and we have to learn how to use it. We get a new vehicle, we have to learn how to use it. The world around us is always changing. So we are built for evolution. We are built for being able to work through with resiliency. I will say that these times, there's a lot of strain and stress that impacts people's ability to be a little bit more resilient in the workplace. And that is okay. That is okay. I think as leaders, it's our job to have that level of empathy and consideration and point of view that meet people where they're at, and they're not always going to be at their best. They're not always going to be in a place where they can just pull their socks up and get in line. So how do we deal with the human experience at work? Okay. So let's look at no, oh my gosh. Here, I'll just see if I can pull up the poll. Okay. So can you still see my screen or is it gone? Dion, can you see the poll?
Yes, we can.
Oh, so good. Okay. So we've had somewhat successful and not very successful. So I think from our sample, I'm going to ask those of you that said very successful, and I'm sorry, it's probably one person. So it's just, or two people. What was one or two key areas that you think made a difference in making it successful? So whoever felt that they've had that successful experience, if you could share a couple of key elements that you thought made it successful.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
I was one of the persons that selected very successful, and my name is Kerry. What we found in our environment to ensure that our projects, our innovation was successful would have been, focused on heavily on communication to our team. We and what we term over communicating in some instances, because that, in our view, is exactly how you achieve buy-in. Because once your team members understand exactly the why behind what you're doing, you easily achieve the buy-in in exactly what it is that you're trying to innovate or introduce to the business. So that's one element I would say would have garnered the success that we would have achieved in our transformational project.
So great. Thank you, Carrie. I can't agree with you more. We do feel that one of the biggest challenges is, what do we say? So let's say the transformation is not as favorable. It's uncomfortable. And then what happens is people get paralyzed by paralysis, saying, well, we don't really want to say that, or we don't know what to say this month. And then there's this vacuum of no communication. And human beings will fill in the gaps. They will get together at lunch and they will presume and project and try and figure it out without any knowledge, like really, like actual information. So communication is one of the most important elements of supporting people through a transformation. So I can't agree with you more. That's step one. Yeah. So those who said somewhat successful, what do you think was, other than communication, is there another thing that you think really helped in achieving some success in your projects or your transformation, your organization? Okay, let me ask it differently. How do you know it was successful? How do you know that it was somewhat successful? What makes you say that? What, for those of you that voted that, what made it feel successful, or what do you know about it that was successful? Anyone?
I'll jump in here. Hi, Corinne.
Hi.
For me, I knew it was successful because the initial objectives would have come about. We would have reached the goal, but obviously getting to that objective was not easy. So that's why I would have clicked somewhat successful. As a lady just mentioned, communication is a big part of it, but sometimes I feel that top management, the whole process of change is just an idea in their heads, but they've not done the necessary research to determine, is this change really needed?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this the right change or that we need within the organization? So I say
Yeah.
research plays a big part in it as well.
Yeah. And Dwayne, how would they get that information? Like, other than, like dollar figures, like a lot of times things are based on money decisions, but who in the organization could they actually draw on to start talking about, is this the right change? And
Um, for me, sometimes it's a case where the top management may work in a silo, so it may be a group of them that just come up with, hey, this has to be it, and it's not being really communicated with anybody else in the organization. As a matter of fact, the end user. So, for instance, if you work in a environment where it sells products and stuff, and you're innovating new products or new services, then I believe that a lot of the new product introduction needs to come from research done in the marketplace.
yeah.
No, sometimes it's not that case. Sometimes we just pop up with an idea of a new product because that's what we want, but the necessary research hasn't been done the correct way.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right too. And this is where I challenge top leaders, senior leaders and above to say, who owns the how? Like who owns part of the why and mostly the how, but also can we engage with frontline through working groups or strategic sessions, having a representative from a group that's serving customers, somebody who's actually serving customers or has a really good handle, a vested interest or personal interest on what the market's doing. Like bring them to the table and
Correct.
right and frame the why and where we're headed, you know? Yeah, so good. So this is a culture shift. Like we're not going to later today be able to go and be like, okay, so we're gonna, get involved where we can. I do want to share. So at the conference, because I do get to come and speak, and I'm so grateful to spend some time with you guys. I hope to see you all there and meet you in person. I will share with you a toolkit on how we communicate, like using tools and resources, the key elements of preparedness, like how do we get people ready in our team and ourselves, how we get ready for this. And so you'll have some tangible things you can take away and speak with people about and start creating a movement. I call it creating a movement. And start asking different questions. And I'm going to share with you what those questions look like after this. But I have combined the notion of change management, the things that I get hired to do as a consultant, and what leaders need to do in order to be part of the transformation. And it's called shift leadership. And it's the bundling of 4 different areas that we assess to and then also support. So emotional intelligence has been, around for a long time. There's lots and lots of books, lots of information that you can tap into what EQ includes. And so the reason why this was founded was because we focus so much in the workplace on, are you smart? Are you like savvy? Are you smart? And then we realized that, but are you emotionally smart? Like, can you manage yourself in a very high level way, resisting confrontation, like resisting the need to be disruptive, inappropriately disruptive. There's appropriate disruption, by the way. And there's ways to do it really well, but what I call the inspired flow. So are you going to work feeling like you are part of the solution? Are you optimistic? Are you empathetic? Do you have the ability to have confidence in what you're doing? And these are all things that are within us. Yes, we get validation from our direct leaders and people around us, but it is from within us that we can actually, our center of influence is within us, that we can have that. It's not a resource that people give to us. Self-regulation is another big one. So I say around what we say to other people, how we say it, you know, our communication skills in general, and also our resilience. So we need to be resilient, especially been gone through a pandemic and all the things that are going on. I don't know if you hear about the news in Canada. We're kind of in a dogfight with our besties. So we're feeling a little bit you know, a way about it, but resilient, you know, we're trying to figure out how we're going to move forward with this situation at hand. So emotional intelligence is really, really key. But I also think that social intelligence is important. Conflict resolution. So not just, you know, being like, if find yourself in conflict, but how we use conflict to be a positive thing inside our teams and our organizations. And another part is work-life effectiveness. It's not about balance. There's no balance in work life. We try really hard to say, well, it's work-life balance, but it's actually effectiveness. What does that look like in this day and age? And then also, how do we effectively be good performance managers, not just to maybe our direct reports, but even to people around us, our peers. How do we do that in a collaborative and caring, kind way to ask, you know, tell somebody this was, you shouldn't have done that, or like, you know, this was something we need to talk about because it impacted our ability to succeed. Okay, then there's change intelligence, which we talk about, like how to manage people around us, stakeholder management, how to be a solutions strategic thinker. This is not something everybody has innately. This is a skill that needs to be developed. Some people have it naturally. Some people would like to be told what to do. And that's okay. Like, we need both. But in terms of leading through transformation, we need to be those solutions focused thinking and have fantastic communication skills, informal, formal communication. And then the we intelligence is about us coming together. I tell leaders that it's not about managing the tasks to get to the next steps. It's about inspiring people to look to the future. We together, we are working on this. And to both Carrie and Dwayne's points, that requires communication, that requires engagement and involvement, that in appropriate ways. And I talk about in We Intelligence, the sphere of influence and control we give people. If we go out to people and say, hey, what do you think of that? They could say, I don't like the color of your shirt, to this is something that I would prefer to not do. And the sphere becomes everything. Whereas I encourage people to be very laser focused on what we're asking people, why we're asking people for feedback. What are we going to do with it? If we ask an open question, we get all the answers, we can't do anything with that. But if we say, what supports can we put in place tomorrow that will help you succeed in this change? And they say, I need time with you. I need more training. I need documented processes. You know, that is something we can action. So that their sphere of control and influence is directly related to your ability to do something. Okay, I'm just looking at the time. And then, so this is the model. And at the conference, you'll get like a toolkit that will allow you to explore your own areas of power, strength, things that come to you naturally, and areas that are opportunities to evolve and to be able to really leverage some of the resources in order to grow into. Okay, so here's what it looks differently. So I've got the same linear pathway, but when we've got shift leadership, like we've got this like way of being, thinking, and doing, embedded in who we are as leaders and people in organization, we start asking different questions. Again, this is a transformational shift for organizations. So you're not going to be able to go into your senior leader tomorrow and be like, hey, what is the sphere of influence for this innovation? They're going to be like, what are you doing? Like, so this requires some organizational shifts, but this is where we can start seeing ourselves differently as part of the solution of transformation. So, this question of what does success look like and feel like? So again, it's about not the function, but the people, what they're feeling, wanting, needing. And then it's also who does it impact and when? Like, what is going to happen? Is my team, an IT team, are they going to be asked to do extra work? And do we have capacity for that? Like, these are the kinds of serious questions that we need to talk about when senior leader or we're getting a new strategic plan. Start thinking, breaking it down into during the strategic planning session. Who is this going to impact? When do we have the capacity? And who can we involve early to guide solutions? And exactly what Dwayne was saying. And then for implementing, does my team have clarity and ready for transformation? So to Carrie's point as well, like, are they well informed? Not just the day before, oh, by the way, now we're doing this, but have they been included early and informed along the way? And you'll get a resource to help you plan out that communication at the conference. We'll talk about how to actually do this as a leader and some of the tools you'll need as a leader. Will my team trust me during it? So as a leader, you're going to talk about it. How do you become a trustworthy leader? And how do you build that trust with your direct reports so that when things go sideways, because they do, they will stay with you. They won't say, oh yeah, see, we knew it was never going to happen. They'll stay with you. So how do we do that? And then who are my critical partners to guide and support me as a leader? Who are your people that are going to be your support system as a transformational leader? Okay. And then when we succeed, remember, sustaining change is one of the downfalls, or the lack of sustaining change. So I like to say, how do I measure success for our team before it's implemented? We talk about this. What will success look and feel like for us? We're carrying the ball. The ball is fully in our court. What will success look like for us? Customers, return customers. Is it happy customers? Or is it sales? Like, what are we working towards as a team to keep sustainment with some momentum in sustainment? And I believe in celebration. How will we celebrate each other, the team, the success? We need to be able to acknowledge and pause and celebrate the things that we're doing together. And then how are we going to collect, monitor, and action feedback so that there's continuous improvement? So we don't just stay there. Sustainment's forward moving. We've got to, and then there might be a level up in 3 years. So we've got to be in a place of stability. Okay. So all of us as leaders will have this notion of getting buy-in, generating desire, and seeing results, full of fostering adoption. So this will be all our particular set of skills. It's not just change managers who own this. It is leaders who are in the world of transformation. Okay, so questions?
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. I certainly have lots of questions, so I'm going to have to be cognizant of the time. But I want to just really thank you, first of all, for breaking down the 29 Degrees Institute model as it relates to change management. I really like how you laid it out for us, especially the shift leadership bit. That was something else.
Yeah.
I think, Corinne, one of the areas that you mentioned, and for those who are familiar with us, Charlatan Research and Development, we are laser focused on the implementation aspect of strategic planning. And you spoke about middle managers. And there's one pet peeve, and I know we've discussed this, Corinne, and I want to ask in terms of your experience with middle managers and the discomfort that they face sometimes when they're brought in either at the end or somewhere close to the end of a plan. And they're told, go, I think your exact words were go, be great, make things happen. Right?
Yeah.
What has your experience been with that group? And what are some of the tips? Because I do see a few middle managers here. What are some of the
Yeah.
tips that you would share with them? Just one or two, because they got to get the rest at the conference.
Yeah. I think so. I work primarily with middle managers on developing this skill set and this knowledge because it's about asking questions differently. It's about being able to ask really good when you're been saying, go, this is something that's happening. There's a way to ask questions to say, so what does success look and feel like to you? Like starting to bring it back to define this for me so that I can successfully lead my team. And I think what we typically do is shut down and say, oh gosh, and then we go in and in our office and and like wonder about my job. And like we kind of spiral into this notion of how am I going to do this? I think we need to be empowered to say, like, what are the kind of questions that I should be asking in order to define direction, success? I don't want them to get in the how. Let me figure out how I'm going to do it. I need to know what, why, some of the when and the when, and you give it back to the senior leaders to say, like, help me succeed, help me communicate this better, help me get some buy-in early. Who can I bring to the table to help with this? Like, having those kinds of conversations, it will be transformational. They'll be surprised that you are thinking in this way about the people part. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, that's also a part of building confidence, not only the leader in you as a middle manager, but you in yourself, because that transition is a bit of an unsure one. You would have done some, good job on the front line, and people say, hey, let's promote you. You can be a middle manager, you can be a supervisor, you can be some level of manager. But then the actual currency that you've been dealing in before, which was transactional, you're taken into your new role, whereas your new role needs completely different currency, right? So you need to work on your relationships, you need to work on your communication, your leadership skills, and the list goes on, right? So I really love how you broke that down. If there are any questions at this point, you guys can feel free to unmute. Me and Corinne, we can talk for the entire day. I see Allison, one of our speakers, all of our speakers on the call. So I want to acknowledge Allison and the Bosley Ladies United Network as well. Thank you so much for joining our call.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. All right. Also, too, we know that we have something special in store for all of you that would have joined here today, but those who have not yet registered, a special offer in terms of the conference, a group rate. So you need to check your inbox tomorrow morning, bright and early, because we are going to have a special offer for you guys. Of course, it's going to be a limited time, so look out for that tomorrow. All right. I have one final question, Corinne. You spoke about being disruptive, but you spoke about there's good disruption. Now, I know one of the tactics there is asking good questions or asking the right questions. But I wanted to see if you wanted to share, because I know you're going to share a lot about this at the conference, but do you want to share some of the examples that you've seen in terms of good disruption?
Yeah. Okay. So I think for me, leaders who are, fiercely, okay, I'm just gonna say like this. I don't want to use a cliche. So I think leaders who are coming from it from an authentic, genuine place of
Yeah.
interest for the people. So, we can be business minded and strategic and worry about numbers and budget, and we can do that. We can hang with the business side. It's those leaders that are saying, yeah, but what about my staff? Like, what about my team? What about me as part of a team? And how do we talk about that in a way that's not uncomfortable to other leaders who may not be thinking about that?
Yeah.
So it is about having a bit of a strategy, an engagement strategy, or a way to say, get some time with your direct supervisor and say, you know what, I just need a little bit more information about this. Middle managers are the first target of change. So you hear about it first, and then it's about, where am I going to need to engage on, inform, and be involved in order to be able to lead my team. So it's about finding those conversations, about having those conversations. And to your point, like, that requires emotional intelligence. That requires a little bit of ability to communicate, and with some of that change intelligence. And sometimes when we're disruptive, other people, it depends on how it's delivered, because disruption can feel like resistance. I'm not going to do those. That's not where we're headed. We're saying we're doing it. I want to talk about the how we're doing it. And so we can explore that in our workshop and talk a little bit about like how to, and I know Barbados is different than Canada, like we have a different way. So we will definitely I'll bring, not the Canadian vibes, but I'll try and, amalgamate the way that we operate in Barbados. I just working with Dion and our conversations, I understand it, and working in other CARICOM countries. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. We know you bring in the Barbadian vibes. We know you have Barbadian, Corinne. But yeah, I think too, just a final bit on that. Like you said, we're doing it, but let's have a conversation about how we're doing it. I think being able to move away from the emotive arguments and proper analysis, proper conversation, and proper benefits. Like, okay, if we do this, we can achieve this. In real terms, whether it be in, whatever data we're measuring, whether it be in cost savings or income, right? We have to have the arguments that make sense to the people that we're arguing with. And I say arguing, and I have to put that in quotes. Yeah.
One of the things that stopped, I had one of my contracts, I was working with a very difficult senior leader, and he had been under investigation, performance management, and he has been 25 years in this organization, government. So he wasn't going anywhere. He was retiring in the next 5 years, and he was as he is, take me as I am kind of thing. So I had to figure out how to be disruptive to his way of thinking. And the one thing I said to him was, figured out how he ticked. Like, I figured out what his ego was attached to in the work that he was doing, because it was a lot of ego. And the one thing that I said to him that stopped him in his tracks was, people value what we can measure. And so if we can measure the success rate inside your direct reports, people will value you as a senior leader. And that, for some reason, just because it was now about showcasing, then he was able to come on side with having different conversations. So it's just really getting curious about who you are working with and understanding what makes them tick. And having in a non-confrontational way, having those kinds of discussions when you can. But
yeah. All right, so we are just a few minutes shy of 1 p.m., which means that it's time for us, unfortunately, to close the conversation. There was so many gems here, Corinne, and I want to say thank you so much to you and to 29 Degrees Institute. We do have our series continuing next week. We have Quran. Today we had what, minus 1,000 degrees in temperature from Calgary, but next week we have carnival vibes because we will have Quran here, and Quran is another powerhouse. So next Wednesday we'll be here again. So I encourage you all to register. I encourage you all to share this with a friend, and of course, you need to look out for that offer in your inbox. But yeah, I think that is it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining and spending lunch with us today. And we look forward to seeing you again.